Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass have already proven their incompetence and poor leadership during the Los Angeles wildfires. Now, as we experience rampant lawlessness and civil unrest, it's never been more clear California's in a state of turmoil. And I ask my fellow Angelenos, why are Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass still in office?
Mel, any message from you to Governor Newsom or Karen Bass tonight?
Spend less on hair gel. That's it.
Yeah.
You know, what can I say to them? Not big admirer of either.
I don't like him.
Newsom stepped onto the stage carrying himself like California's golden boy, calm, polished, and full of confidence. Then Mel Gibson entered the spotlight and instantly changed the atmosphere. Gavin may have expected another routine political exchange, but Gibson came out swinging, taking direct aim at both his leadership and public image. This wasn't an ordinary debate. It felt far more like a one-sided confrontation. By the time it ended, Gibson hadn't simply questioned Newsom's record. He had delivered a sharp and memorable critique that left a lasting impression.
We deserve much more and much better, and there is absolutely no adequate excuse the governor or mayor can make for this gross mismanagement and failure to preemptively deal with what they knew was.
California didn't merely elect a governor. It seemed to cast the lead role in a political drama titled As the State Burns. Gavin Newsom often appears less focused on governing and more focused on the performance that comes with it. He presents himself as a polished and composed leader, even while critics argue the state continues facing mounting challenges. To them, his record resembles a lesson in driving away businesses, taxpayers, and common sense. Yet somehow, he always manages to maintain that camera-ready smile and carefully rehearsed confidence.
And Mel Gibson had some very interesting things to say about California Governor Gavin Newsom's failure to prepare the state for these catastrophic wildfires that are ravaging LA still.
In 2019, I think Newsom said, I'm going to take care of the forests and maintain the forests and do all that kind of stuff. He didn't do anything.
Didn't do anything. And then on top of that, they cut the water off.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's all funny. And then I think all our tax dollars probably went for Gavin's hair gel. I don't know, but it's like, it's sad. It's like the place is just on.
If you're enjoying this takedown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. He's got the posture of a superhero, the hair straight out of a shampoo commercial, and the backbone of a jellyfish. Newsom is the kind of politician who could watch someone trip into a pothole on a crumbling road, blame the road itself, and then spend the next 20 minutes delivering a polished speech about bold ideas, innovation, and future solution.
How much more of their destructive decision-making masquerading as leadership are we going to tolerate? It's time to take back our community and our state and put the power and the privilege in the hands of competent leaders whose goals are to protect us and the way of life this nation was founded upon and promises to offer. That's all.
Just look at the homelessness crisis. California spends billions of dollars year after year, yet many neighborhoods still resemble the backdrop of a dystopian movie where the director keeps asking for even more chaos and disorder. Gavin steps in front of the cameras wearing his serious expression and introduces another polished plan that sounds remarkably similar to the last one. Yet the tents remain, the encampments continue growing, and parts of downtown San Francisco feel less like the neighbor of Silicon Valley and more like a scene from The Walking Dead. At the same time, businesses have continued leaving California at a rapid pace. Tesla relocated its headquarters to Texas, while many small business owners say they are being squeezed by high taxes and burdensome regulations. Even so, Newsom often appears surprised by the trend, as though it's difficult to understand why some people would reconsider paying premium prices, facing a high cost of living, and dealing with ongoing concerns about the state's direction.
A lot of people have been coming out and calling out, Gavin Newsom endlessly, and the biggest one of all is Mel Gibson. We all know that he is a very big, open critic of Gavin Newsom, and he continues to actually do that, and rightfully so, because we already know that there's a lot of issues going on right now within the state of California.
Power outages sometimes seem like something pulled straight from a comedy sketch. Residents pay some of the highest electricity rates in the country, yet they still worry about losing power whenever demand increases. Freezers begin to thaw, groceries are ruined, and frustration continues to grow. Gavin Newsom speaks about leading the nation in green energy, but critics argue that relying on electricity from neighboring states hardly reflects true energy independence. For many families, it doesn't feel like progress. It feels like one more problem they have to manage. Then there's California's water situation. The state borders the Pacific Ocean and depends on mountain snowpack, yet drought restrictions have become an everyday reality. Homeowners are encouraged to conserve water, farmers face ongoing uncertainty, and debates continue over how limited water resources should be managed. Critics argue that Gavin's approach depends too heavily on restrictions instead of long-term solutions. To them, the strategy appears more reactive than effective. And if Mel Gibson ever decides to revive Mad Max, some would joke he wouldn't even need an expensive movie set. All he'd have to do is point the cameras toward California and yell.
His house in these wildfires.
Yeah.
And what you just saw there was an effort to recall the governor and Mayor Bass. Does his star power in this matter?
It matters in the sense we're playing it now on national television on a highly rated Fox and Friends First show, and that has gone viral on social media. And meanwhile, the same day that Mel Gibson says what he says there, and he's correct on so many things as far as the management of wildfires, Gavin Newsom's approval on the handling of the wildfires is only 30%.
Wow.
Then the pandemic arrived, and critics argue Gavin Newsom's biggest problem wasn't simply the restrictions but the perception of a double standard. While millions of Californians canceled weddings, funerals, and family gatherings, Newsom was photographed dining at one of Napa Valley's most exclusive restaurants. In a single moment, he became the face of what critics described as rules for everyone else, but not for me. Education and public safety have also remained major points of criticism. Despite California's enormous wealth and technological leadership, the state continues to face concerns over struggling schools and rising crime in some communities. Retail theft has become so common that many everyday products are now kept behind locked glass cases. Meanwhile, Newsom insists conditions are improving. His critics remain unconvinced. To them, California increasingly feels less like the Golden State and more like a real-life version of Grand Theft shopping.
Governor Gavin Newsom and LA Mayor Karen Bass, well, they were also suggesting that LA was under control. They had it covered while, of course, LA was essentially burning. And they've been blaming Donald Trump for all the chaos in LA, while Gavin Newsom has been trying to emerge as the strong leader of the Democrats as he eyes off the presidency in 3 years' time. But actor Mel Gibson has spoken out, blasting the governor and the mayor, rightfully so, for their disastrous.
For many Californians, owning a home feels increasingly out of reach, and even young professionals often find themselves renting with multiple roommates well into their 30s. Families are being forced into smaller living spaces while new housing initiatives are announced, yet they rarely appear to match the true scale of the crisis. On the national stage, Newsom projects confidence and ambition, but critics argue that his record fails to reflect that image. They say he presents California as a model for the nation even as persistent issues like housing, crime, and infrastructure continue to trouble many residents. Supporters describe it as progress, critics dismiss it as political spin, and somewhere in the middle, Californians continue waiting for solutions that feel genuine rather than simply well-announced.
Giving the governor advice, I'd say, don't be so overt that people can see the wheels turning. The obvious question would be, well, you've been governor of California for 6 years. You were lieutenant governor for many years before that. When did you have this epiphany? Right. And the answer is when he found that the Republicans.
There is also a growing sense that politics in California has become more about performance than governing. Critics argue that Gavin Newsom often comes across more like a media personality than a traditional governor, with carefully managed appearances and polished messaging, while long-standing problems continue to build behind the scenes. He is frequently accused of presenting one public image while facing criticism over apparent contradictions, promoting climate action while using high-emission travel for official events, or speaking about inequality while appearing in extremely affluent settings. To supporters, that reflects leadership. To critics, it represents image over substance. Wildfires have also become one of California's defining challenges. Every year, residents prepare for another devastating fire season as homes are destroyed and communities are displaced. Newsom regularly appears to highlight recovery efforts and climate-related explanations, while critics argue that prevention measures and infrastructure improvements have not kept pace with the growing scale of the crisis. For many residents, the frustration comes not only from the disasters themselves, but from the feeling that long-term solutions continue to lag behind.
We have to do a better job. We need competent, good governance. Now, that doesn't mean you can't criticize the governor of California for, I think, some very bad decisions over a very long period of time. I mean, some of these reservoirs have been dry for 15, 20 years. The fire hydrants are being reported as going dry while the firefighters are trying.
California's budget presents a similar picture. The state generates enormous revenue through some of the highest tax rates in the nation, yet it continues to struggle with recurring budget shortfalls. Critics argue that large surplus announcements are often followed by changing financial projections or complicated spending plans that become difficult for the public to follow. Meanwhile, essential public services such as roads, schools, and public safety continue to face pressure and inconsistent performance. On environmental policy, Newsom has promoted ambitious goals, including ending the sale of new gas-powered vehicles by 2035. Supporters describe the plan as forward-looking, while critics question how practical it is when the existing power grid already experiences strain during periods of peak demand. The contrast between long-term climate ambitions and present-day infrastructure challenges remains a recurring point of debate. Regulations also continue to face criticism. Development projects frequently move through lengthy approval processes involving permits, fees, and zoning requirements, which many believe slow housing construction and increase costs. Critics argue this creates a system where solving the housing shortage becomes more difficult than the shortage itself. Supporters view these policies as necessary protections and reforms. Critics see them as signs of a system that moves too slowly to keep up with reality.
And look at Gavin Newsom. He tried to do this, was it a radio show, a podcast, whatever he tried to do. Now he's busy trolling on social media, and it's cringe, it's falling flat. I'm sure they'll come after me now, who cares? Because Donald Trump is one of one. Only he can do what he's done with social media, with podcasts, in the way he's done it. 900 rallies and counting.
High gasoline prices remain another common source of frustration. Californians often pay considerably more at the pump than drivers across much of the country, while states such as Texas continue to enjoy noticeably lower fuel costs. Critics argue that taxes and government regulations contribute significantly to the higher prices, while supporters point to broader environmental and energy priorities. California has also experienced a steady flow of residents and businesses relocating to states like Texas, Florida, and Arizona, often citing the cost of living and regulatory burdens as major reasons. Even a highly publicized recall election reflected deep political divisions, although Newsom ultimately remained in office. Public safety has also remained a major concern, particularly regarding organized retail theft in certain communities. Many stores have responded by locking everyday products behind glass or closing locations entirely. Officials often point to legal reforms and enforcement challenges, while critics argue the response has not gone far enough. Despite these ongoing issues, Newsom continues to position himself as a prominent national political figure. Supporters see ambition and leadership. Critics see an increasing disconnect between the public image and everyday reality.
We see a lot of the cities that you can't conceal carry, or it's extremely hard to get concealed carry, or California being one of them, Illinois, New York. I mean, do you think that everyday citizens carrying a reduces crime or increases crime?
I think the evidence suggests the opposite. It increases the likelihood of
Perhaps the greatest irony, according to critics, is California's reputation for climate leadership. While the state continues advancing aggressive environmental policies, severe wildfire seasons still produce massive emissions and widespread destruction. Supporters argue these policies are intended to achieve long-term results, while critics believe the immediate outcomes tell a much more complicated story. More broadly, Newsom is often described by his opponents as placing greater emphasis on presentation than execution. Every major crisis becomes a public event accompanied by polished messaging and carefully managed appearances, while everyday concerns such as housing affordability, homelessness, and aging infrastructure continue to dominate local conversations. Supporters view him as a modern leader navigating exceptionally difficult challenges. Critics see him as a skilled political performer leading a state where persistent realities are becoming increasingly difficult to overlook.
He plays this slick little game of words. He doesn't say crime goes up, he says deaths go up. Why? Because that phrasing triggers your brain into thinking are the problem. But let's break that down. If you've got more in one state than the other, obviously the number of deaths involved is going to be higher in that state. That doesn't mean it's more dangerous. It just means the tools used are different. You know where the death rate...
In the end, Gavin Newsom is often portrayed by critics less as a conventional governor and more as a symbol of California's broader political debate. A state once recognized for opportunity, innovation, and growth is now frequently associated with rising costs, infrastructure challenges, and ongoing public frustration. Supporters believe he is managing a series of complex long-term problems. Critics argue that too much attention is placed on image and messaging, while California's most pressing issues continue to outpace meaningful solutions. Despite the criticism, Newsom continues presenting himself as a national political figure with ambitions extending beyond the state. For many observers, however, the contrast between California's public image and the day-to-day experiences of many residents has become the defining question of his political legacy. Whether history ultimately remembers him as a reformer or as a symbol of political mismanagement remains part of an ongoing national